All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Along the Watchtower podcast. Today is Tuesday, January the 12th, 2021. I had to think about that for a second. It's another lovely day in the neighborhood. We are, of course, watching. I'm going to try to keep my opening monologue short because I've noticed for the past few episodes here, I haven't been able to get through the plethora of news that I've lined up. But, most of what we're going to see today is what I kind of covered in a short preview. Stay tuned until next episode. Yesterday, I kind of went over how, first Trump was temporarily banned from Facebook and suspended from Twitter. Then he was permanently banned from Twitter, and both Germany and France, Angela Merkel and Macron, I think, is still in France. They both, disliked the move because censorious behavior leads to more censorious behavior. And you know where I stand. As long as you are not inciting hate or violence, then you should be allowed to speak as you see fit. And with, for example, working in, well, let me not get ahead of myself. To finish, they didn't like that, and they spoke out about it. And so then Trump tried to get around the Twitter ban, which led to him being permanently banned. Then, as a domino effect, as I mentioned would happen, Parler got removed from the Play Store, from the Apple, not Google Play Store, but from the Apple Store, then got removed altogether by Amazon, and is now, I forgot where, and I think we'll cover that today, but they're on the same network that Gab is on. And so that's just where that is. But what we're seeing, what we'll cover today, the Cori Bush legislation is still being pushed, and as a result, you're seeing people who have GOP leanings or are openly Republican, but not necessarily a Trumper, but openly Republican, and may or may not have, and that's the thing, the criteria kind of changes, but you're seeing all over the board people like losing their jobs. We'll cover a Harvard law reviewer who is a Republican. She just got fired for I'm not sure what circumstances she mentioned, but she was part of an advisory committee and for the Institute of Politics. As a result, oh my God, and we'll also cover how the bias of the narrative that's being manufactured and crafted is so heavy-handed that instead of delivering the news, you get a clear sense of where the writer stands on a position, but not necessarily what it is that they're supposed to be reporting on. It's like, yes, we know how you feel about the salacious and seditious, right? Blah, blah, blah. We get that, okay? We don't need that. We just need the information. But it's all activist journalism these days. It's really, right now, I mean, it's been that way for probably a good 15 years or more, where you start to see less and less of a universal approach of delivering information and more of an op-ed or a commentary. Look at Don Lemon, Worst Journalist of the Year. He got an award that's the award he got. Don't look at me. Like I said, we're going to try to keep the monologue short. So let's get into it. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. And I keep trying to do better. I hope you like the colors in the background. But yeah, and if you actually, if you want to take a look here, this on my left-hand corner of my bar, this was supposed to be today's news, but this is today's news. But yeah, we try and pull the strings and see where they go. Once we crop up with one story, we try to follow it and see if there's updates. But we're crafting a picture here. They try to craft a picture, we try to craft a picture for ourselves, or myself for me, and you just kind of view and make your own opinion, whatever. So to begin with, let's start with, okay, so I'm like, all right, so I want an update on the impeachment proceedings, seeing how that's gone through to the House. So they're going to vote on Wednesday. That's the short story. That's the information. The House is going to vote on Wednesday to impeach Donald Trump for blah, blah, blah. And see, here's the thing. It is being alleged by the paper that he incited it. There's no way to definitively prove or tell me that he did that. It's not like it's been proven in a court of law. And I don't feel like a journalist should be taking that position. But you'll see why. It's funny that Politico does that, because this is what Politico considers news. Ready? Inside Pelosi's push to impeach Trump. This time it's personal. She views the siege of the Capitol as an attack on the lawmakers, aides, and support staff, whom she considers her family. Seriously? This is the same family, like, for example, Bernie Sanders, who she helped rip the nomination from not once but twice in 2 different campaigns. This is the same Pelosi who tells you to stay home but then goes out to get her hair done during a lockdown, and then when she gets caught, blames the hair salon owner and the hair salon business themselves. Okay, this is the same Pelosi that refuses to put a Medicare for All vote on the floor because she knows that her seat as Speaker of the House isn't challenged. Although she only won by a very slim majority. So, you know, it's amazing to me as a volatile career politician as she is, that they would say something like this. But then again, it's activist journalism. As Speaker, Nancy Pelosi was forced to huddle. And keep in mind, I'm reading it in this voice because that's the way it's written. It's written like it's like a synopsis for a spy movie. As Speaker, Nancy Pelosi was forced to huddle in a secure bunker during the Capitol riots. Several of her young aides spent hours sheltered under a conference table in the Speaker's suite as armed rioters pounded the door with menacing taunts of, "Where's Nancy?" When Pelosi was reunited with her staff hours after the deadly siege at the Capitol, the Speaker didn't even have to ask. She could see the terror reflected in their eyes. Now, as the House prepares to impeach President Trump this week for inciting the insurrection that shook the core of U.S. democracy and left 5 dead, the undertaking for Pelosi isn't simply a matter of politics. Okay, so none of that was news. Okay, and this is not an op-ed. This is not an op-ed. This is the type of shit I'm talking about. This is not an op-ed. None of that was news. I want an update on the impeachment bill. What are you doing? The Speaker views the invasion of the Capitol as more than just an attempt to overturn the results of the presidential election by a pro-Trump mob. For Pelosi, it was also an attack on the people she calls her family. The lawmakers, support staffers, and aides who are the lifeblood of the Capitol, and the building that she considers sacred and has called a second home since birth when her father was a congressman. Democrats are now moving to, now they get to the news. Democrats are moving to impeach Trump for an unprecedented second time in the remaining days of his presidency, charging him with high crime. Okay, kind of news, because we know that. Okay. A week ago, another impeachment would have seemed out of the realm of possibility, with the Democratic Party just days away from controlling all 3 levers of power in D.C. and finally bidding farewell to Trump. But not news. I think Nancy looks at this and says, how do you, when the president has put your people at risk of harm or death, not respond in the strongest way possible? None of this is news. The emotional toll will have a lasting effect on Pelosi and her caucus. Blah, blah, blah. Some frantically calling their families in case they needed to say goodbye. We are a family. Those were the words used on the caucus call over and over. Oh my God. So they had a Democratic caucus call where I guess Pelosi, and who knows if it's true or not. It's politics. So my go-to reaction is absolutely not. But where Pelosi, I guess, was like Mother Teresa battle commander. And so let's see. We are family. Those were the words used on the caucus call over and over again, said Representative Madeline Dean, who was among those in the chamber. She recalled when Pelosi and other Democrats gathered by the phone for the first time since the attack on an emotional call. She talked about her staff, how she was so concerned for her staff and other people's staff. Pelosi was one of the multiple Democrats on that 3 to 5 hour call to encourage members and their staff to seek counseling for the trauma they experienced. Support staff, too, should have access to the same mental health services, Pelosi said, noting how they, too, are an integral part of the Capitol nucleus. Some of the maintenance people call me mama. We're done. Some of the maintenance people call me mama, Pelosi said on the... I'm not reading this trash. This isn't even news. This is ridiculous. Oh my God. It is painfully, painfully clear. And I need the weekends because like the reality is that this is a 24-hour 7-day a week news cycle for the most part. The weekends kind of allay things, but a lot of stuff happens over the weekends, and then I end up getting backlog because I try to cover it on Monday. But I digress. The point that I'm trying to get to, I'll get there one day, and that day is now. Is that we will continue to see them press the trauma of it, the monstrosity of the accent of the action. And I'm not trying to remove the gravitas of what occurred. I am, however, trying to get to the bottom of it and understand it as deeply as possible, because a lot went down that day. Can I point out to you, there were obviously a bunch of idiots peeing and pooping on stuff and stealing podiums and making phone calls with no masks. Completely, I don't know, I guess, oblivious to the fact that they were at Capitol Hill. It's like supposedly one of the most secure places ever. And let me not get to the National Guard and the Pentagon. So we have this element, right? We have those guys. We have guys with Molotov cocktails and semi-automatic rifles, right? We have a third group of masked individuals with zip ties who were really ready to get down freaking Owlman style, right? For you nerds out there, what up? And then we have a fourth group who went specifically and took sensitive materials, okay, and intelligence gathering materials. Who knows? It could be, and I always bring this up, and it's a very simple thing, a very easy thing. She has a date in a month. That date can be replaced. Email can be, it's called email spoofing. She can be phished. I mean, there's a litany of things that can be done with simple bits of information. You don't necessarily need the nuclear launch codes, but the fallout continues here. And it will, and it calm down. Harvard removes GOP lawmaker from advisory committee over election claims, right? Because now anything, and this is what I was talking about delegitimizing your claim. When you commit violence, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, but just as well, anything that you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion, right? So you claiming that you believe in civil rights and civil liberties is all well and good until you start burning stuff down and destroying things and hurting people, right? Therein lies the issue, is that you can't simultaneously represent, something of the so-called common good and understanding and attack people. Like, the two things conflict. And so what people see, and what people hear you say, they say actions speak louder than words. What they see from you is violence and mayhem and macabre. And so they're not going to listen to anything you have to say, no matter how legitimate, the claim is, let alone no matter how legitimate you think the claim is. Hold on, I need to adjust the lights here. It's kind of going, I feel like it's going a little fast. But let's no, that's my nano leaf. That's my nano leaf. Okay. Just that a little bit. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. So, let us continue here. Representative Elise Stefanik has been removed from an advisory committee to Harvard University's Institute of Politics as a result of her peddling false claims about voter fraud, the school announced. Over the past several days, Director Mark Guerin and I have spent a good deal of time considering the role of the Institute of Politics of our colleague, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, whom I have included in this message. Mark and I have read public materials, listened to students and alumni, and consulted with colleagues on this important matter. Elmendorf asked Stefanik to resign from the advisory committee, which she said she refused to do. Good for her. It's like, can you provide a legitimate reason as to why I should resign? And here's the thing. It's the Institute of Politics. If she is a proponent of a electoral candidate utilizing their legal and constitutionally enabled right to challenge the results of an election. I'm not sure where she went wrong other than being on the wrong side of the political ideological battle. Oopsies. My request was not about political parties, ideology, or her choice of candidate for president. Rather, in my assessment, Elise has made public assertions about voter fraud in November's presidential election that have no basis in evidence, and she has made public statements about court actions related to the election that are incorrect. Moreover, these assertions and statements do not reflect policy disagreements, but bear on the foundation of the electoral process through which this country's leaders are chosen. In a statement to The Hill, Stefanik said the decision to remove her from committee shows the willingness from Harvard to cower and cave to the woke left. Well, what she should have said was that the institution's decision was a reflection on their desire to politicize education, right? Shouldn't she, as an individual representative, Elise Stefanik, have the right as a representative to assert her? This is absurd. The ivory tower's march towards a monoculture of like-minded, intolerant liberal views demonstrates the sneering disdain for everyday Americans and will instill a culture of fear for students who will understand that a conservative viewpoint will not be tolerated and will be silenced. I relish the opportunity to stand up for freedom of speech and freedom of thought on college campuses across America. Congratulations, Harvard. The entire board of the Institute of Politics now consists only of Joe Biden voters. How reflective of America. Well said. Well said. You would think that a higher education institution would want to encourage dialogue and debate. But as we've seen over the years, college campuses have become ground zero for the indoctrination. Stefanik has also joined more than 100 House members in objecting to the certification of Biden's victory when a joint session of Congress met to certify them last week. Yes, and then they repeat the story. Yes. So, this level of bias is getting, irresponsibly bad. People are making, to say poor choices would be an understatement. You have something like this. A disgruntled employee changed the State Department's website to say that Trump's term ends today. Now I hear you. Some of you are like, oh, that's benign. That's not a big deal. Ha, ha, ha. It's a funny joke. The reality of the matter is that you press an inch to get a mile. You continuously exert or exhibit conduct that is unbecoming, and people will see that and compound upon it and continue doing that and expand upon it. Okay? And I mean, really, as humans, that's generally what we do. There are trailblazers and then those that follow them. And, first of all, and then second of all, the fact of the matter is that the heavy bias that people generally on the left, but some on the right as well, said did not exist amongst this administration is again shown itself, right? I mean, you've never really seen something like that with a previous president, right? Can you imagine someone messing with the presidential profile of Barack Obama, right? I mean, maybe George Bush, maybe. But again, I know what you're going to say. Like, the technology wasn't there back then. I hear you. But I mean, the State Department's website was there. So, I mean, come on. But Mike Pompeo is launching an investigation after biographical pages for the president and vice president were changed on Monday. A disgruntled employee at the State Department changed their biographies to say their term was coming to an end on Monday, 9 days before Biden is sworn in, to two current serving diplomats with knowledge of the situation, told BuzzFeed. The changes to the State Department's website comes days after Trump incited it. Oh, my God. Okay. The president's biography was changed to read Donald J. Trump's term ended on, 2021-01-11 at almost, 7:50? While the vice president's biography was edited to Michael R. Pence's term ended at the same time. The timestamp on Trump's page changed multiple times before they were removed and replaced with a 404. So yeah, it was probably updating concurrently. So ridiculous. It's a closed system that's nearly impossible to hack. So that's why they know it's an inside job. In recent days, dozens of career U.S. diplomats signed okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, actually, this might be noteworthy because I don't think I've said this on air. So, in recent days, dozens of career U.S. diplomats signed two unprecedented dissent cables condemning Trump for inciting. Well, oh, God. The outlet said that the second strongest worded cable rebuked Pompeo for his failure to issue a statement unequivocally acknowledging that Biden won the 2020 election and protested the president's incite. That's this. Oh, okay. So you know what? Since everything is speaking in declaratives, he incited a riot. He incited a riot. You can't read an article without them reminding you that it happened and reminding you who did it. Let's keep that in mind. Let's talk about stochastic terrorism. Let's get to it. So I don't know if you're like me. I find a fascination with like language and phonetics. And so I was surprised that I hadn't heard of this word. I thought it had something to do with like stoicism. And I was like, oh, here we go. When it's like male toxicity, yada, something related to that. And it's like, it's not that at all. But that's, it's been drilled in you for so long that you kind of default to it. I'm sorry. I do apologize. I shouldn't need to apologize. Like, okay, I made a mistake. It's not like I acted on that basis. I wasn't deterred from understanding it. Like, that's the thing. When you make a mistake, you don't act. Don't even get me started. Okay. Stochastic terrorism. This is an article from dictionary.com. What up? And so it says on Saturday. Oh, well, because it's going to talk. Okay. Here we go. So there was a massacre in El Paso. I vaguely recall in August, some time ago, a year ago. And when it happened, stochastic terrorism surged 63,389%. So what does it mean? Stochastic terrorism is the public demonization of a person or group resulting in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable, but whose specifics cannot be predicted. The word stochastic in everyday language means random. Terrorism here refers to violence motivated by an ideology. Now tell me if this reminds you of somebody. A leader or organization uses rhetoric in the mass media against a group of people. Okay. This rhetoric, while hostile or hateful, doesn't explicitly tell someone to carry out violence against that group, but a person feeling threatened is motivated to do so as a result. That individual act of political violence can't be predicted as such, but that violence will happen is much more probable thanks to the rhetoric. This rhetoric is thus called stochastic terrorism because of the way it incites random violence. So here's the thing that I just read. Basically, if you say something that is a negative criticism, negative rhetoric in the mass media, and that's the thing here. There are key things. A leader, key, or organization uses, because an organization, well, a leader, key, uses rhetoric, key, in the mass media, key, against a group of people, key. Okay, so if I don't use it in the mass media, if someone, what isn't mass media these days, right? You would have to like type it on your phone. It'd have to be like a text message that was never sent or something. Everything is mass media. Everything, everywhere. So literally what they're suggesting is that if you say something, if you have a negative criticism against a group, and this is an interesting thing, a group of people, what about a singular person? Okay? But if you have a negative criticism in this case against a group of people, and someone says, you know what? I agree, but I don't think you're doing enough about it. And they go and they do something extra about it. This is what they're suggesting is a form of terrorism. Now I understand if, for example, and I always will come back to this, for example, if I keep coming back to it, I should probably look up his name. If you are the DJ, the radio host in the Rwanda genocide, kill all the cockroaches, we know that cockroaches is a derogatory term for the Tutsi ethnic group, right? So when he's on the radio, it's like someone saying, like, jump all the kikes, right? If he's on the radio spouting this derogatory term, right? That makes more sense to me because the derogatory term is derived from a group or a faction that is inherently bigoted and violent, right? It's not like, this is the thing. If someone were openly saying something that incited hate or violence, there's specific rhetoric for that. Someone simply having a negative criticism, right, uses rhetoric in the media against a group of people, should not be held accountable. And this is part of the reason Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act existed. Should not be held accountable for what someone else does. As a result, we are bordering on thought crime. We are bordering on thought crime at this point. It is a very bizarre world because I can understand to a degree where they're coming from with this. The idea that you can dog whistle, right? That's essentially what they're kind of insinuating here. It's not a new thing. This is this sort of rhetorical game, the game of rhetoric that happens with politics. It's part of politicking, is knowing how to be tactful, to speak to, like, for example, during the Reagan era, political commentators often look back, historically speaking, at the Reagan era and some of the language used, or during the 70s, a lot of the language used by Republicans was like thinly veiled racist language. Law and order, we will not, live in a jungle and stuff like that. That was geared towards, wealthier suburban white people talking about inner city ethnic minorities. So I understand where they're coming from there, but this to me is a scary framework because at this point you can apply this really to anyone who might say anything that is even remotely provocative. So with that being said, the lens of stochastic terrorism, that's going to be a fun one to say repeatedly. The lens of stochastic terrorism is the tool by which a lot of this material is being written. So that's why we can't get through an article without them literally almost verbatim, it seems, or at least paraphrasing each other, talking about what happened and who is to blame. Oh, Lord. Lord, oh, Lord, oh, Lord. All right. So, to continue. There's a very pregnant pause there. Oh, well, no, I had another article up, but it did this weird thing. Okay, so 2 officers were suspended from the riots. I guess that's what it was. I think I read this yesterday. But 2 officers were suspended in the riots, and talking about an inside job. We were I think I did talk about this yesterday. Right. Because one guy, that's when we were talking about yesterday. No, it might have been yesterday. One guy got hit over the head with a fire extinguisher. Another officer killed himself. Another rioter who was at the riot apparently is dead. He had a bunch of guns and stuff in his place, and witnesses say that it was just a bunch of blood. I'm looking for the article right now. Is that? See, I'm a little discombobulated. Did I not? Oh, here we go. Okay, let's bring that up. Just gonna do a little pivot here. So the Capitol Hill officer, right? You have the one guy who killed himself. Nobody knows why. He's a 14-year vet, and yeah, he's just there's just like he's just kind of dead, and was it? What? Let me just. Yeah. Howard Libengood, 15-year veteran. He killed himself, and no one seems to know why. Reading about him doesn't seem to indicate that usually when someone, especially a cop, they're just like, oh, he had some issues, da da da. There was none of that. So it's just like people who are involved with this are just kind of, I don't know. You guys, me. But Trump supporter 53 who was arrested killed himself at his home after his wife called 911 to say there's blood everywhere and cops found 2 rifles. He was found dead at his home in Alpharetta. Documents obtained exclusively by Daily Mail, show the wife called 911 on Saturday morning, telling authorities there was blood everywhere. His body was found in the basement. The cause of death was suicide. Officers reportedly removed 2 semi-automatic SKS rifles. He had been charged with attempting to enter certain property, the Capitol grounds, against the will of the police. He was out in violation of the 6 p.m. curfew. Okay, so a Georgia man was arrested at the violent Capitol Hill siege. He's died. Christopher Stanton, Georgia, shot himself dead at his home in Alpharetta on Saturday. He was found with a gunshot wound to the chest and died by suicide. Documents obtained exclusively by Daily Mail show Georgia's wife called 911 on Saturday, telling authorities there's blood everywhere. Felony members on the scene described by police as extremely distressful. Officers also removed 2 SKS rifles. He had been charged with attempting to enter the Capitol. He was found around 7:15 after the 6 p.m. curfew. They were placed under arrest. The circumstances surrounding his death remain unclear. They haven't responded to Daily Mail for further comment. So far, 82 people have been arrested and more than 55 have been charged with the insurrection. That'll actually bring me up to the zip tie guy. Oh, they got the zip tie guy, Eric Munchell of Dunwoody, who is known on social media. The zip tie. See, how did they? I wonder how they got the zip tie guy. That's what I'm wondering. He was the smart one. He had a mask. How did they get him? See, he was probably talking beforehand. That's what I mean. These guys, the amateurs. But what's interesting is that don't expect charges against Trump or allies for inciting the riot, DOJ says. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If they incited a riot, would you have them dead to rights? That doesn't make sense. But the department does not plan on seeking incitement charges against Trump or any of the others who spoke at the rally because they're not legally liable. This is the type of stuff I'm talking about. You can't prove that there was any complicity on the part of Donald Trump or anybody who spoke. And there's no such law as like inciting stochastic terrorism. That's because you cannot, unless there is direct calls to violence or hate speech, you cannot charge someone with a crime based on speaking. Period. Some Democratic leaders suggested that Trump and others should face criminal charges for allegedly, thank you ABC, for allegedly encouraging the fatal riot, but the DOJ told reporters that they don't have a fucking case. I'm sorry, that they're not pursuing such matters. We don't expect any charges of that nature. Federal authorities have already filed charges against more than a dozen protesters who've infiltrated the Capitol. Yeah. That's about that. They found 160 people, the FBI. They're charging 160 people and that's just the opening into the probe. So, continued fallout happens here. The Orwellian present continues to solidify itself before our very eyes. At least 25 people under terrorism investigation in connection with the Capitol Hill riot. I'm not entirely sure if that has anything to do with the FBI's probe, because I was going to say the terrorism is like Department of Defense. Oh, I see. So this story actually has been updated because they've been trying to spitball as much news as possible, as rapidly as possible. So they haven't exactly been accurate. We've seen how they erroneously suggested Alex Jones was instigating the violence when he was actually found on video on Bullhorn talking about them not being violent because, drum roll please, that's all that they would end up talking about. And what do we see? The delegitimacy of any claims of election irregularity or anything of that nature, and simply the riot. That's all now that will dominate. And through and looking at the riot, it will be through the lens of stochastic terrorism. That'll be. I'm telling you, you're gonna hear it soon. You're gonna hear it soon. If not, I'm gonna start it. Because I think it's a legitimate dialogue to have. I think it's a legitimate topic of conversation to have. That would, if anything describes Trump's rhetoric, that would be it. That's about as close as you will get me to coming to suggesting something like, oh, he incites white supremacists and da. No, because again, as I've told you, the name of the game in politics is rhetoric, is thinly veiled rhetoric that caters to all of the demographic that you need it to. And since the 70s, well, fucking old white politicians speaking thinly veiled languages about how they're going to, be the law and order candidate. We're going to crack down on the war on drugs. It's like, well, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about black people in poor neighborhoods. They're talking about brown people in poor neighborhoods. Like, that's, you know what I mean? So people need to stop acting like they haven't utilized dog whistling before. Trump's just not very good. He's just fucking awful at everything. My God. And it's like, in trying to get people to, I mean, he's made, okay, there have been probably like 3, maybe 5 policy decisions that I could agree with that he's conducted as president, and that's a different topic of conversation altogether. Because literally all his other policy decisions have either sucked or have been corrosive, right? And then on top of that, his candor as a person, as a quote unquote politician, is a non-fucking starter. So it's just like, and then you start talking about it, and you try to highlight the few good things that you can. Nobody wants to hear that shit. What they want to do is emphasize the bad things, which are one thing, but then they usually emphasize bullshit, which is a totally different thing altogether, when the man has plenty of things that are legitimate and that have happened that you can talk about. This is the worst kind of catalyst for change that can happen, right? Because you want there to be movement in the sort of decaying, stymieing, archaic, sort of calcifying political entrenchment that we've seen basically as long as I've been alive. Basically, in the last 30 years, the same people have been in Capitol Hill since I've been alive. The same people. Let me rephrase that. For the most part, the same people have retained power. Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, etc. Okay? So you want change, and you want things to be shaken up. I get that. But he's the worst kind of catalyst. He's the worst kind. It's one of those things where it's negative inertia. Right? So so at least 25 people under terrorism investigation in connection with Capitol Hill riot. USA Today made a correction. The story has been updated to note that a defense official has corrected a statement that 25 troops are under investigation. It's actually 25 people under investigation, some of whom may be troops. So, at least 25 people are under investigation on terrorism charges for the siege. Representative Jason Crow of Colorado and a former Army Ranger said he spoke with Army Secretary McCarthy on Sunday and was told that at least 25 domestic terrorism cases have been opened as a result. The defense official, who was informed about the call, initially confirmed that the cases involved troops, but later corrected that statement. The official said some troops, active and reserve, may have been involved, and the military will investigate them as necessary. There is concern that military members may have been involved in the riot, the official said. Those under investigation are suspected of taking part in the insurrection. We engage in identifying all of those who took part. The Pentagon has also been asked to review all members who will be part of the security detail for the inauguration January 20th to ensure that they are not sympathetic to domestic terrorists. That's very fair. That level of security and vetting should have been done on Trump's part. Well, not really, because how do you first of all, if it's not a rally that his campaign even created, then how do you vet people at a rally that you aren't the head of, but you've been asked to speak at? I do know this much. Again, besides the efforts, it seems like, of the Pentagon and SecDef to stymie all efforts of the National Guard to assist Capitol Police. They were unarmed. They were told to do traffic. They made the Maryland governor and the Maryland National Guard wait. Besides that, it seems like Trump took no effort to beef up security either. So it's one of these things where it was a powder keg that everyone knew was going to pop, and everyone had their own specific agenda that they were trying to accomplish with it. That's what it seems like this has worked out to. It didn't work out. It definitely did not work out for Trump's favor. It worked out really to everyone else's favor except Trump. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Prosecutors weigh heavy hammer, felony murder for rioters and Capitol officer's death. Yes, Brian Sicknick was a Capitol police officer who was clobbered over the head with a fire hydrant. I think we were watching video of that on the last article. He was hit over the head, and he died later on from his injuries at the hospital. It reads here, as federal prosecutors filed charges against rioters who took part in the riot. Investigators continue to gather evidence in the death of Brian Sicknick, who died from injuries sustained during the attack. While most murder investigations focus on the person or persons who caused the fatal injury, former federal prosecutor Tim Hepfee said prosecutors could charge many rioters with felony murder even if they were nowhere near Sicknick. Really? Hepfee led the months-long investigation into the law enforcement performance before, during, and after the deadly 2017 white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. What? Hepfee was the U.S. Attorney for Western District of Virginia from December 2009 through January 2015, appointed by Barack Obama. Under the doctrine of felony murder, which applies in the D.C., any murder that occurs during the commission of one of several underlying felonies is chargeable as felony murder. The classic example is if three guys go to rob a convenience store and one guy is the getaway driver. If in the commission of the robbery the clerk was shot and killed, all three of the participants in the robbery are potentially guilty of felony murder. The problem is that, and I remember hearing this example, and it's like, well, the problem here is that the three guys are conspirators. They conspired together and planned this robbery. So what happens in the execution of their planned robbery, of course, is on all of them, regardless of if one of them is in the presence of the murder or not. That makes sense to me. You know, you plan some shit and you plan something nefarious and illegal against someone, and things went far worse than you could have imagined. That's on you. But if you go to a rally and the rally gets out of hand, like, here's the thing. I could see possibly utilizing this blanket felony murder as a charge against those that you may have already arrested. If you arrested people therein at the time of the murder inside Capitol Hill rioting, that I can understand. But people who just simply were there at the rally, I don't see how you can charge them with felony murder. Remember, not everyone at the rally rioted. Like, this is seen through the lens of stochastic terrorism. And through that lens, anyone at the rally was a rioter. Not a rallier, but a rioter. We're going to use that, rally-rioter. Anyway, I digress. House Democrats briefed on 3 terrifying plots to overthrow the government. We read the other day that, there were planned armed protests at every state capital by a group. A group. There's no name. It's just a group. Rando group here. And everybody needs to be on the lookout. And that was pretty much all we were told. So this doesn't surprise me. At least, hopefully we'll get some details here. One plot includes surrounding the Capitol and murdering Democrats to allow Republicans to take control. God. How exactly does that work from a legal standpoint? I mean, how do you continue to have a constitutional democratic republic if you just murdered the other ruling political party? Capitol Police briefed Democrats. Oh, it's not even like the alphabet agencies. It's Capitol Police. Capitol Police briefed Democrats on Monday. Hold on, they didn't brief Republicans? Okay, Capitol Police briefed Democrats on Monday about 3 more potentially gruesome demonstrations planned in the coming days, with one plot to encircle the Capitol and assassinate Democrats and some Republicans. At least they're even-handed. On a private call Monday, new leaders of the Capitol Police told House Democrats they were closely monitoring 3 separate plans that could pose serious threats to members of Congress as Washington prepares for Joe Biden's inauguration. The first is a demonstration billed as the largest armed protest ever to take place on American soil. That's it. Another is a protest in honor of Ashley Babbitt, the woman killed while trying to climb into the Speaker's lobby during Wednesday's siege. And another demonstration, which 3 members said was by far the most concerning, would involve insurrectionists forming a perimeter around the Capitol, the White House, and the Supreme Court, and then blocking Democrats from entering the Capitol, perhaps even killing them, so that Republicans could take control of the government. Again, how does that go? Oh, and look, Representative Elise Stefanik loses Harvard post for lying about election fraud. Wait a minute. First of all, what if she actually believes what is coming out of her mouth? How is she? That's not lying if you believe what you're saying. I mean, I guess it'd be pathological lying. It'd be spreading falsehoods. But like lying is an intent to tell a fallacy. If you believe what you're saying, you're not lying. You're just telling bullshit. You're just dumb. You're just fucking stupid. But again, this is seen through the framework of stochastic terrorism. That is, I'm going to hate saying it. So everything really is about demonization. Everything. Where was I? Democrats killing them. Oh, the members of Congress whom HuffPost spoke to Monday were extremely concerned. It was pretty overwhelming, one member said. Officials on the call warned lawmakers about sharing too much information with the media, saying that divulging specific dates, times, and countermeasures could aid the organizers. How does that aid the organizers? How does exposing a secret plot aid the organizers, right? So they have 24 hours. So first of all, this is under the suggestion that these plans weren't just all of a sudden whipped up in 10 seconds. Because I feel like something like this requires a lot of planning and a lot of organization. And seeing as how this riot happened last week, and now all of a sudden all 50 capitals have these elaborate riots planned, and like, dude, wait a minute. This takes planning and organization. You telling me you didn't know this before now? Or did you know before now, didn't say anything? Or is this bullshit? I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not within the intelligence agencies. I can only speculate as to how difficult it must be to organize and plan 50. And it's like that's presuming it's one organization doing it. Okay, fine. Just one assault on a Capitol building. Not like a police station in with Chaz, but on a Capitol building, especially when everyone's on high alert. How you plan to assault any state or capital or federal building? And it's like, all right, well, now we have to retool our plan because everyone's on high alert. That's going to take time. You don't have a lot of time. All of this is just bothersome because it just reminds me of the hype and hysteria post 9/11. Oh, and I'm running out of time and I'm not going to get to it. All right, I'm going to speed it up. We get our president or we die. An FBI report warned of a war at the U.S. Capitol before pro-Trump insurrectionists attacked it. All right, at least someone is honest. An internal FBI report warned about a quote-unquote war at the Capitol the day before the insurrectionists attacked it. The situational report came from the FBI's office in Virginia and said the Bureau had received information indicating calls for violence in response to unlawful lockdowns to begin on January 6th. It had nothing to even do. Oh, geez. The document cited an online thread with specific calls for violence, including one that said Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors being kicked in, and blood from their BLM and Pantifa slave soldiers being spilled. Pantifa, wow. Get violent, the thread went on to say, according to the report detailed in the Post story. Stop calling this a march, a rally, or protest. Go there ready for war. We get our president or we die. Tuesday's report adds another layer to the massive intelligence failure that contributed to the storming of the Capitol. It's always an intelligence failure, isn't it? I mean, we can bomb Soleimani all the way on the other side of the planet with a missile up his ass. Know where that nigga is. Okay. We can know where he is. We can identify where he's going to be, know exactly where he is, see him in real time, shove a missile up his ass. But you're telling me that we can't find these idiotic deplorables whose IQs you've been insulting for the last 4 years? Now, mind you, a lot of these people are idiotic. They ran up into the Capitol building without masks, pooping and pissing on everything, stealing podiums and making phone calls while posting it on Instagram. Dumb. You're dumb. You're dumb and you're done. But to go further, not everyone there had that lack of tactical awareness or strategic planning. Okay? And again, that leads me to believe not everyone there was going there to riot. But, you know, I love it how they always call it an intelligence failure. Okay, so the facial recognition app, ClearView sees a spike in use after the Capitol Hill attack. Now, if you recall, I forgot who, I think it was Getz, who said that the facial recognition software was used to find Antifa members. And it's like they never seem to detail what facial recognition software this was. I guess this is it. So let's read a little bit. After the Capitol riot, ClearView AI, a facial recognition app used by law enforcement, has seen a spike in use. There was a 26% increase of searches over the usual week-a-day search volume. There are ample online photos and videos of rioters, many unmasked, breaching the Capitol. The FBI has posted the faces of dozens of them and has requested assistance in identifying them. Local police departments around the country are answering their call. And yeah, 45,000 digital tips. But we're gonna push ahead. I might cover that a little bit more tomorrow. Probably not though. Facebook and Twitter are largely culpable for all. And see, here's the thing. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna wait one more day because I want to cover the social media aspect of all of this in as deep a fashion as I can, because this affects all of us and our ability to simply say how we feel to each other saying how we feel to each other, save for the things that are intended to inspire harm or incite hate, or to be because I mean, listen, motherfucker insult you like you're an adult in the world. People are going to insult you. Don't be people are going to insult you. What we're talking about is the type of rhetoric that has directly attributed to violence, like the anti-Semitism is the thing that comes most prominently to mind. And see, here's the thing. Even then, because like in my life, I remember back in the day, like dude calls you outside of your name, calls you the N-word or whatever. You have two choices. You can get into a fight with him, and although people around you will understand, you still get in trouble. You'll still cops will still arrest you. You'll still go to jail. If you're in school, you'll still get suspended and etc. And if you're a kid or whatever, or you could eat that and be a man, be an adult, be a kid or whatever. I mean, if you're a kid, and understand that you live in a world where you cannot control how people feel or what people are going to say or what people are going to do. Now, fast forward to specifically an adult situation. If somebody, calls you the N-word and then attacks you, that's a hate crime. That's obviously a hate crime. If someone harasses you and harangues you and calls you the N-word, that's a hate crime. That's a verbal hate crime, which I think is a law. See, I'm not even sure if that's a law, because my whole thing in life is you cannot control what happens to you, only what you do with what happens, right? And it's not necessarily about tolerating intolerance, but it's about knowing how to effectively deal with that intolerance. And getting yourself sent to jail isn't dealing with it for assault. And I think about the Ice-T guy. That Ice-T can exploded. When I first time I saw it, I thought he did damage, and I was like, oh man, he just concussed this guy. Oh, we didn't see blood. This dude got arrested or something. Yada yada. Thankfully, the guy was he was fine. But that's what I'm talking about. That because this white boy called this black dude out of his name. And really what it was is he was using the N-word in a not a playful, but in a sort of a fashion, like a camaraderie. He was a black dude. He was, N-word this, N-word that, blah, blah, blah. And the dude was like, you can just really say, you've all seen the video, you all get it, whatever. And so the point I'm trying to get to is that because he let that white dude, he let him vexate him, he acted out of pocket. Because, as a black man, and there's things, people are filming you, you're in a store, it's like, cops gonna be calling in a second, unless you plan on, unless you got a getaway car ready, you're not about to just commit assault right on, you know what I mean? I would hope not, because please, this is what we're talking about. Don't put yourself in a position to go to jail, black man, period. So the whole thing here that we have with the Silicon left and their censorious ways it does not prevent hate. What it does is it stymies thought. free thinking of any kind, because there's no way to target hate in the criteria that they're looking for. So you're saying that if I go and do research on election procedures and point out misconduct, then that's going to be banned and censored? How so? I'm not even talking about this presidential election. I'm merely speaking about election procedural misconduct. Let's go a step further. I'm not even talking about the election at all. I'm talking about specifically Dominion voting system and their software. They're irrelevant of the election. They have proprietary software that they use and sell to companies and to businesses and to states, right? So in order for them to conduct elections. We don't need to talk about this election. What if I'm talking about an audit of the company's election history, period? Like, this is the thing. It isn't a matter about trying to curtail or stymie hate and violence. This is about like suffocating controversy. This is about diminishing. I don't want to say open-mindedness. I hate that term. I'm open-minded. But it seems to be more about diminishing alternative narratives of any kind than it does about shielding or preventing further hate. Like, what do you think happens when millions of people who are incited and incensed and vexated and who have a gripe and an axe to pick, how do you think they're going to feel when they don't have the ability to speak amongst each other? Now, some of you are like, well, why would you want haters to corral and generate their hate? Well, I mean, communication, ostracization, incarceration, or elimination. If they can't talk to you and they can't talk to each other, what do you think happens? Right? Let's take it to a microcosmic scale and look at school shooters. This is kind of a case where you have a disgruntled kid who's being bullied on one end. He is a dysfunctional household on the other end. No one to talk to on either. He's being cut off on both ends. What do you think happens? He acts out. I hate to use the analogy of a child, but however it is in a lot of ways you're kind of dealing with that sentiment, that animosity, that unfettered animosity is almost childlike. Children are very dangerous when they have things like firearms, for example. When they have things like malicious intent, violent intent, and the will to see it through. What do you think happens when you remove the ability for them to express themselves in any way, shape, or form? This is why Daryl Davis and Martin Luther King, like, they to me are iconic. Daryl Davis, Martin Luther King, and Frank. No, damn it! And his name suddenly escapes me. Bobby Seale, Fred Hampton. There we go. Daryl Davis, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale. They understood the optics of the movement. They understood that the way to move the needle was to convince hearts and minds, to coin a phrase. The whole thing about in-grouping and like, oh, we're fighting for something, so it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks and no one else matters. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you were fighting for equality for everyone. I thought you were fighting to make what it is that you stand for as a principle known and utilized and exercised by all people. You can't just ask half of people to be decent. You can't just presume that half of people are all decent. Like, that's not how any of this works. You're dealing with human beings. But I digress, as usual. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. And be well to yourself and to each other. Take care.